the Gloucester Writers Center decided that it would bring its resources of discussing important issues with artists, filmmakers, historians, scholars to try to put some perspective on where we are in dealing with race and change in American society. So we have historians and filmmakers who have trained their eye and their work on issues around the Black struggle in America since its origin up through the present. We began the process of organizing the panel in mid-June when things were looking very hopeful in the aftermath of the terrible incidents of police violence against Black people. There was talk of reparations in the air. There was talk of major criminal justice reform. There were several thousand demonstrations in cities around the world, including 4,000 in the US. But the question is, where have we gotten to now? We are at Labor Day 2020, 3 months after George Floyd's murder. So I've asked Rudy to join me in creating the context of where we've sort of moved through in terms of public opinion, political activity, up through Labor Day of this year. So Rudy, I'm asking that you kind of set the stage. Where are we now?
We are at, and I am going to redefine the term more to its original meaning, at a true existential moment. And by existential, which has often come to mean a crisis of some kind, you know, in existential, in the sense of existentialism, we are at a moment of choice. And the choice that we are facing is a choice, I believe, as to whether we will continue to be a republic or if we will become some aberration of the idea of a republic, or with a metastasized democracy, which we've seen in places like Hungary and Poland and other places. So in terms of where the country is, we are in that place of choice. What has happened in the last 4 months is a reversal of the notion of the winter of our discontent. The summer was that winter of our discontent, a time of expression of all of the things that we are discontented about. And I'm speaking of from the left. So the range of things as it has evolved has been discontent with policing, racism, lack of diversity, health results as a result of a pandemic, historically the causes of that, and a broader range of issues that have been brought back to the table. Reparations have been brought back to the table. It almost feels as if it's been a time for all of these issues to be put back into the pot and to be stirred, and all things being asked for at the same time. That has been our summer, and a full expression, even the marriage of movements. So we've seen the LGBT movement married to the Black Lives Matter movement, and a joining up of civil rights movements in a broad definition of justice and fairness. That has been our summer. Part of the process that is familiar as well is the transitioning from shock and horror at the things that have been going on historically, the hand-wringing that has led to whites re-examining white privilege and, you know, seeming to want to redress white privilege in some progressive way, you know, even to the point of a kind of a self-flagellation about, you know, what that privilege has been meant to those who are well-meaning, you know, who have expressed a will to share power in some fashion. That has morphed into two strains. One of those strains is people got tired of it. They eventually got tired of being well-meaning. They got tired of feeling bad about being white and having privilege and power. They got tired of what the effort was going to be to really make change. Some even got tired of the idea that they would have to share power. And so that well-meaning first movement has begun to wane. And there have been some gestures. There have been those gestures, you know, we are familiar with those gestures, the appointment of diversity officers within companies and the symbolic hirings within companies of Blacks to, you know, now represent the sharing of power, and all of that has been one strain. The other strain has been a kind of a co-opting of those movements, but particularly the Black Lives Matter movement. And the co-opting of it functions through hiring of certain special Blacks who are going to be the assuagers of either guilt or of the intent of privilege to change the nature of privilege. The co-opting also has been in the elevation of certain members of the movement into media stars. And we're seeing that now, for example, many members of the Black Lives Matter movement have agents at the major Hollywood talent agencies. And the function and purpose of that is to elevate them into media figures, whether they end up having a deal at Netflix or Amazon, or they have, you know, some kind of projects that they're working on, you know, film, television, podcasts, others. There is that absorption. We saw it happen with the Panthers. We have seen it happen with the Young Lords Party in New York. You know, it was so wonderfully in its kind of grotesque shaping, written about by Wolf. You know, in his wonderful book about that Panther dinner that was organized by Leonard Bernstein, you know, which turned into a fiasco because the intentions of it actually were not well designed. That's what's partly been happening. I believe where we've come out of it at this point is well described actually today in an op-ed piece in the New York Times by Jessica Bird. It's called A Different Direction for Black Politics. And it in some ways encapsulates where we are at this moment, which is unfocused, concerned with still the small matters. And by small, I don't mean insignificant, small in relation to what the real issues are for the next 2 months to 6 months. There are only, at this point, 1 or 2 issues, and really one issue, which is an election that will decide the fate of the American Republic. It is the only issue. Reparations is not an issue. Diversity is not an issue. You know, all of the the issues, even power sharing within the Democratic Party, it's not the issue. None of that is the issue. There is one issue: getting people out to vote under whatever circumstances, and maybe even dire circumstances, in order to stop the direction that we're moving in, and may move in for another 4 years, which may be irreversible. And from that point, begin to address the other issues. But there cannot be, even at this moment, a sense of grievance in the Black Lives Matter movement on the left about the way things have been. Because if there is that grievance expressed at this moment, then this moment will be lost. And I believe we are in danger of fracturing and losing this moment because the various factions that have been expressive over the summer are not getting necessarily their way, are not getting the seat at the table that they want. If this moment is lost, there will be no table. And what there will be is an even deeper fracturing, I believe, because the aftermath of a lost election next will be a complete disintegration. I believe there will be blame. There will be a deepening fissure among even those groups that seem to have coalesced to a certain degree in the summer. There will be fracturing into even more tribal groups, and that will completely diminish even the ability to kind of reassemble after a possible lost election, to be able to address how does one conduct a politics under a different America, and maybe an extreme version of America, more so than we have ever seen. I feel that we are, and that's the notion of an existential moment. We have a choice. We can continue to argue, as many will, over reparations. We can continue to argue over police funding, defunding. We can continue to argue. The killings will continue. We have seen the killings continue. There was a killing here in Los Angeles, that is the most heartbreaking thing. There was one in Rochester that happened several months ago that is just now coming to the fore. These things are going to continue. They're going to continue right through the election. The police have dug in now. They now no longer feel as if they're, on the run from protests. They now are feeling their oats again. They feel a president has emboldened them. The public, there are no more marches about any of these events. No one's marching about Breonna Taylor. No one is marching for Frazee, the kid who was killed here in Los Angeles or in Rochester, only small pockets of it. These are not the issue at this point. And so this requires a real sophistication and a clarity, Again, Frederick Douglass gives us the strategy, because at a certain point, as we know, Douglass understood there was really only one issue. There was only one issue. That the issue was the destruction of slavery, and to facilitate that, Black men had to be given guns and be allowed to fight. Everything else would be argued after that. Everything else would be fought over after that. Political power sharing, colonization, and where we were going to be. Everything else would be argued after that. But first, the war had to be won. And the war has to be won, and every effort has to be made now to win the war. And that should be the only thing that is being discussed.
Well, Rudy, thank you for setting us in context 3 months after the death of George Floyd, and welcome to the panel discussion of the Gloucester Writers Center on race and change in the aftermath of the killing of George Floyd.